The homeless Santa had a secret that would destroy a billion-dollar empire. The shopping mall was packed with last-minute Christmas shoppers when I first saw him. An elderly man in a worn Santa suit, standing by the food court with a cardboard sign that read, "We'll spread Christmas cheer for a warm meal." Most people walked past without a second glance, but something about his eyes stopped me cold. They weren't the eyes of a broken man. They were the eyes of someone who had seen everything and lost it all. My name is Victoria Ashford, and I'm the sole heiress to the Ashford hotel empire. That December afternoon, I was supposed to be at our flagship property reviewing quarterly reports. Instead, I found myself approaching this man who would turn my entire world upside down. "Excuse me, sir," I said, holding out a $20 bill. "Please, get yourself something warm to eat." He looked at me with those piercing blue eyes and smiled gently. "Keep your money, miss. I only accept payment for services rendered. Would you like a photo with Santa, a Christmas song? I do a wonderful rendition of Silent Night." There was something about his dignity that moved me. Here was a man clearly down on his luck, yet he refused charity. He insisted on earning whatever he received. "All right then," I said. "Sing me a Christmas carol, and I'll buy you dinner." What happened next, I'll never forget. His voice filled that crowded food court like warm honey. Every note was perfect, trained, professional. People stopped mid-stride. Parents pulled out their phones. By the time he finished, a small crowd had gathered, and I had tears streaming down my face. This wasn't just a man who could carry a tune. This was a classically trained vocalist. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" I asked as we sat down with trays of food. He took a long sip of hot coffee before answering. "Juilliard, class of 1968, another lifetime ago." The way he said it, with such finality, told me there was a story there, a painful one. Over the next 2 hours, I learned about Richard Morrison. How he'd been a celebrated opera singer in the 70s and 80s. How he'd performed at the Met, toured Europe, lived a life most people only dream about. And how he'd lost it all when his wife became ill. The medical bills had consumed everything, his savings, his home, his career. He'd spent 5 years caring for her, watching her slowly fade away. When she finally passed 3 years ago, he was left with nothing but memories and a Santa suit he bought to cheer her up during her last Christmas. "Why don't you sing professionally again?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "At 73, with a 3-year gap in my resume and no permanent address, the opera world moves on quickly, Miss Ashford." "Yes, I know who you are. Your family's hotels are quite famous." Something in his story resonated with me. My own grandfather had built our empire from nothing, and he'd always taught me that dignity and character mattered more than circumstances. I made a decision that would change both our lives. "Mr. Morrison, how would you like a job? A real one?" His eyes widened. "Doing what?" "I'm afraid my skills are rather limited to a very specific field. Our flagship hotel is hosting a massive Christmas charity gala in 3 days. The entertainment just cancelled. We need someone who can perform classic Christmas songs with elegance and grace. You'd stay in one of our suites, receive proper attire, and be compensated handsomely. What do you say?" I could see the hesitation in his eyes, the fear of hoping for something that might disappoint, but I also saw a flicker of the performer he'd once been, eager for one more chance to stand in the spotlight. "I say yes, Miss Ashford, thank you." The next 3 days were a whirlwind. I personally ensured Richard received the best suite in our hotel, a complete wardrobe, and access to our facilities. I watched him transform before my eyes. The defeated man in the worn Santa suit became someone else entirely. The performer, the artist, the man who had once commanded stages across the world. My father, however, was less than pleased. "Victoria, this is madness. You retrusting our most important event of the year to a homeless man you met in a mall. Do you have any idea what this could do to our reputation if it goes wrong? And do you have any idea what it says about us if we only value people based on their current circumstances rather than their abilities?" I shot back. My father and I had never seen eye to eye. He was all about appearances and bottom lines. I believed in people. The night of the gala arrived. Our grand ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and was filled with the city's elite. CEOs, politicians, celebrities, all dressed in their finest, ready to be entertained and write large checks for charity. I was nervous, not for myself, but for Richard. This was his moment of redemption, and I desperately wanted it to go well. When he walked onto that stage in an elegant tuxedo, you could hear the whispers. Some people recognized him from his glory days. Others wondered who this distinguished older gentleman was. And then he began to sing. The room fell silent. His voice, aged but somehow richer for it, filled every corner of that ballroom. He performed O Holy Night with such emotion that I saw hardened businessmen wiping their eyes. He sang Ave Maria and grown women wept openly. For 45 minutes, he held 300 of the most jaded, cynical people in the city completely spellbound. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. People crowded around him afterward, pressing business cards into his hands, begging for private performances, asking where he'd been hiding. My father looked stunned. The event raised twice the expected amount for charity. Richard Morrison had become the talk of the town overnight, but the real revelation came 3 days later. I'd invited Richard to stay through the holidays as my personal guest. We'd grown close during those few days, and I'd come to see him as the grandfather I'd never had. That morning, he asked to speak with me privately in the hotel library. "Victoria, there's something I need to tell you. Something about why I disappeared from the opera world, and why I ended up in that mall." He pulled out an old yellowed photograph from his wallet. It showed a young couple on their wedding day. The man was clearly Richard, decades younger. The woman was breathtakingly beautiful with dark hair and bright eyes. "This was my Margaret," he said softly. "We met when I was performing in Europe. She was the daughter of a very wealthy family, but when she chose to marry me, a nobody from Brooklyn, they disowned her, cut her off completely. She never regretted it. She said love was worth more than money, and for 30 beautiful years, we proved her right." He pulled out another photo. This one showed the same woman, much older, in a hospital bed. When she got sick, the treatments were experimental and expensive. Insurance wouldn't cover them. I sold everything we had, but it wasn't enough. That's when I learned about her family. They were still alive, still wealthy, and still bitter about her choices. I swallowed my pride and went to them, begging for help to save their daughter. His voice broke slightly. They refused. Said she'd made her choice and had to live with the consequences. So I made a choice too. There was an investigator who'd been trying to build a case against Margaret's father for years. Business, fraud, tax evasion, corruption. He needed someone on the inside, someone who knew the family. I made a deal. I'd help him gather evidence in exchange for money for Margaret's treatment. I sat forward, stunned. What happened? I got the evidence. Margaret got the treatments, which bought us 3 more precious years together, and her father went to prison where he died 6 months later. The rest of the family blamed me. They made sure I'd never work in high society again. They spread rumors, blacklisted me, destroyed my reputation. By the time Margaret passed, I had no career, no money, and no way to fight back. So I disappeared into the streets, performing for spare change, trying to maintain what little dignity I had left. Tears were streaming down my face. "Richard, I'm so sorry, but why are you telling me this now?" He handed me one more photograph. This one was recent, a newspaper clipping. It showed my father at a business conference, shaking hands with several other executives, but it was the name caption under one of the other men that made my blood run cold. "James Sullivan, CEO of Sullivan Industries, Margaret's younger brother. Your father has been in business negotiations with the Sullivan family for 6 months, Richard said quietly. They're replanning a merger that would make your company one of the largest hotel chains in the world. I recognized James the moment I saw him at the gala. He recognized me too. He left immediately after my performance. I felt sick. You'd think he'll use your past to sabotage the deal. I think he'll try. But more importantly, Victoria, I think you need to know who you're getting into business with. The Sullivan family built their empire on the backs of others, through intimidation, fraud, and corruption. If your father merges with them, the Ashford name will be tied to that forever. The next few weeks were a nightmare. James Sullivan did exactly what Richard predicted. He threatened to expose Richard's role in his father's imprisonment, twisting the story to make it look like corporate espionage. He demanded we fire Richard and issue a public apology, or the merger was off. My father was furious, caught between $1 billion deal and the truth. But I'd learned something important from Richard Morrison. Dignity and character matter more than money. I spent 3 weeks digging into Sullivan Industries with the help of a team of investigators. What we found was damning. Current fraud, tax evasion, workers' rights violations. Everything Richard had warned me about. I presented the evidence to my father. "You have a choice," I told him. "Close this deal and tie our family's legacy to criminals, or walk away with our integrity intact." For the first time in my life, I saw my father truly consider what mattered. The next day he terminated negotiations with Sullivan Industries and reported our findings to the proper authorities. The fallout was immediate. Sullivan Industries collapsed within months. Several family members, including James, faced criminal charges. Our company took a financial hit from the lost merger, but something unexpected happened. The story of how we walked away from a corrupt deal and protected a wronged man went viral. Our bookings increased. People wanted to support a company with values. Within a year, we'd recovered everything we'd lost and more. As for Richard Morrison, he became our director of entertainment, curating performances and special events across all our properties. But more than that, he became family. He walks my father through the hotel gardens now. Two men who learned that redemption is possible at any age, and that sometimes the people we overlook are the ones who change our lives forever. This Christmas, when Richard performs at our annual gala, he doesn't do it for food or spare change. He does it because he loves it, because he's surrounded by people who value him, and because he knows that no matter how far you fall, grace can always lift you back up. The worn Santa suit hangs in my office now, a reminder that circumstances don't define character, and that everyone has a story worth hearing if we'd just take the time to listen. Are you ready to discover more incredible stories of hope and redemption? Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a tale that will restore your faith in humanity. Drop a comment below telling us about a time someone surprised you by being more than they appeared. Your story might be featured in our next video. And if this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late for a second chance.